Welcome to New Europe Studios on Place Jourdan, the place where you can watch us make the news. With us today, Mr. Guéguen, master lobbyist and master puppeteer in Brussels, a man much feared and much detested in the institutions, a man who has written the most widely read books about the functioning of all the EU institutions, who has a vision and a program. He is also visiting professor at the College of Europe in Bruges. Mr. Guéguen, your last contribution to the thinking around the functioning of the institutions has a lot of doubt about the future, about the procedures, about the way the biggest functions will be fulfilled, will be the way in which people, the right people will be found to be put in the biggest positions. President of the Council, President of the Commission. What is your biggest objection?
Well, first of all, I think that outside the choice of the future leaders, we need to know what do we want to achieve together, which was at the very beginning one of the goals of the Lisbon Treaty. The Lisbon Treaty was supposed first to identify the goal. Do we want to make a federal Europe or something else, a big market, a single market? Then after was supposed to determine the extreme perimeter of the EU, till where can we enlarge, and finally was supposed to simplify. Yes. So we can say that for these three goals it was a failure.
Was the treaty clear in its achievement? Was it useful? Was it did it explain well the steps to?
Well, these were the goals. You remember it was a long story with a convention with Giscard d'Estaing, blah, 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 and after we have read the draft constitutional treaty. Yes, but this was organized that finally we have a clear answer to these three questions. And this was, of course, absolutely not the case. And this is the problem, one of the reasons why the EU is not working properly. We don't know what is the goal, we don't know what is the perimeter, and it's a hell of complexity. I am not a great fan of the Lisbon Treaty, to say the things as they are. I consider that the Lisbon Treaty is clearly a disaster in all elements. And the first to answer your question is that in the top part of the decision-making process, we have a mess.
It was meant to be a constitution and a roadmap at the same time.
Yes, and here we have, in fact, a triumvirate with president of the Commission, which is weak and has been chosen to be weak, to give more space to the member states in a sort of intergovernmental approach, which is absolutely irrelevant and creating a lot of problems. Then he has a deputy who is Mrs. Ashton, but Mrs. Ashton during the same time is president of the Council of Ministers for External Affairs. So one leg in the legislative power, one leg in the executive power. And on top of it, we have Mr. Van Rompuy, who is like a football player and marking systematically Mr. Barroso in all activities.
So there is an overlapping of attributions and...
Yes, means that the vision of the EU has no definition.
In a case which should have been clear, like Ukraine, the crisis in Ukraine, who should have taken the lead?
It's a difficult question. On top of it, my specialization, honestly speaking, is not in external affairs, so I see this dossier externally. But somewhere is a game of shadows. Somewhere we are promising something to the Ukrainian people which we are not able to concretize. And I think that most of the problem is coming from this point. On top of it, we are somewhere shouting and making noise about a potential war or a big crisis, when obviously everybody is satisfied of a sort of status quo in which Crimea will stay very close from Russia because they belong to the same type of people, let's say, and when the eastern part of Ukraine at least will be with a big autonomy vis-à-vis the Russian authorities. And it seems that everybody is satisfied of that. So in other terms, I don't complain about that, I don't criticize, but the announce is very high and the result is very low-key. So we have to admit that our voice on the international scene is very, very weak. I must add here to complement a little bit your question that I'm traveling quite a lot in the world because I like that and it's interesting in my job, and I see that the European Union, which is still the main economic power in the world, is the only region in the world being systematically on the defensive. You go in the US, you go in China, you go in India, you go in the Gulf, everywhere. They are on the offensive, they are proactive, they are dynamic, and here we are very shy and we are systematically on the defensive, which personally I don't accept.
You say the Lisbon Treaty ended in a mess, and we see it around us. Is it because of the design of the institutions, or because of the persons who fill the top jobs?
Well, I think that first the reason is because we have not been clear about the goal and the perimeter of the EU. We have been in a total incoherence. In other terms, we have put the plug before the horses. I think absolutely fundamental that before to create a single currency, we would have to be able to have a real single market. The single currency, any single currency in the world is sustainable exclusively with three conditions. The first condition, we have to have a sort of federal organization. The second condition is that we have to have...
the European Central Bank.
Yes, but not the EU. We have to have a finalized single market, which is not the case, and we have to have a sort of common citizenship, which is not the case. In other terms, we have built a single currency, which is the achievement of a federal system with no fiscal harmonization, no social harmonization, no common citizenship. And this is why it don't work. And the problem of the euro is fundamentally the gap of competitiveness which have been created between the members of the eurozone, in particular between France and Germany.
We still have countries with banking secrecy. How can you...
And we can multiply the ideas. And after we have had the Lisbon Treaty, which again was improperly prepared because the goal was not achieved. But on top of that, in fact, we can say that in the Lisbon Treaty we have two parts. We have the visible part and the hidden part. So the visible part was signed by the heads of state and head of government with Mr. Barroso, Van Rompuy, Ashton, as we know. But the hidden part is also a result of the Lisbon Treaty. This is what we call secondary legislation, comitology, implementing measures. This has been ever complex, I must admit, the bureaucratic basis. And the problem of the EU now is that the political circles are very, very weak, unable to propose a political vision, giving the power to the bureaucrats. I have personally nothing against the bureaucrat. I fully respect the European bureaucrats, but the bureaucrats are the bureaucrats.
So the real power is in the lower echelons.
Absolutely, and not only the power belongs to the lower stages of the Commission, but the system is very, very opaque, which was not the case before, very, very ad hoc, in other terms, very, very procedural and legal, and full of legal interpretation.
No vision.
No vision at all, but also very dangerous in democratic terms, because we give too much powers to the bureaucrats. The bureaucrats are able to have legal interpretation, and you never know where you are in the decision-making process.
Real initiatives get stuck.
Well, to be a lobbyist now, in the good old days, to be a good lobbyist, you need to have a technical competence on something, agriculture, energy, environment, blah, 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 and the relevant network. And then after you were meeting people and defending your case. These good days are over. We are in a completely different system in which first you need to be a lawyer. You have to understand in which game you play. You have to understand for each dossier the appropriate labyrinth. Which door to enter, which door to leave, and this labyrinth vary from one dossier to another. Before Lisbon, the procedures were uniform. After Lisbon, they are ad hoc.
It is surprising what you're saying, because one would expect the functioning to be easier for you in these circumstances, because when you deal with the bureaucracy, you can deploy your skills as a lobbyist. Yes, but when you interview me, if you wish, of course, you invite me because I am a lobbyist, but I am also a citizen. So in terms of lobbying in a very egoistic approach, the more it's complex, the better it is for me.
But I think also as a citizen, and as a citizen I am requiring transparency, I am requiring neutrality from the institutions, I am requiring equal procedures and fair treatment and easy access to the document. And now when you take each stage of the decision-making process, in the drafting phase is very, very hidden, opaque, ad hoc. The adoption phase, you know, is organized now through trilogues with a limited number of actors behind closed doors, so the lobbyists are out, very difficult to have access to information. And then this awful secondary legislation where you need to be a top specialist to understand what is at stake. In other terms, the lobbyists more and more are out of the game. Some can consider that it is good. But the lobbyists are not only the business representative, but also the consumer representatives, the trade unions, the civil societies, the NGOs, and I think very important because the civil society is a counterpower. Any power needs a counterpower. Now we are entering in a very bureaucratic power with a very limited counterpower.
So as a lobbyist, you cannot be creative anymore.
Sorry, let's just pause for a second. It's not a problem for the video,
Yeah?
just
Okay.
because the colors are going to mess
Okay.
up if you don't do it.
How much we still have? No, we still have 5, 6, 7 minutes. Yeah.
Ça va, non?
Oui, oui, très bien, très bien. Très bien. C'est moi qui étais un peu hésitant au début.
I want to see where the sunlight is going.
This is something that you haven't foreseen. This is something that you haven't foreseen.
Well, this is something that we were putting up today. We didn't have time to put it properly.
No, you never thought that there would be sun in Brussels.
No.
Are you going to stand like that?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go on.
Oh, she did it.
5 more minutes.
Fine.
Otherwise you sweat. And
It's fine.
tell me when you can do a closer plan so that you can cut. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ce serait intéressant de poser une question sur le lobbying. Est-ce que c'est convaincre ou s'opposer? C'est une question
Est-ce que
intéressante. Se convaincre les gens ou s'opposer?
Oui, bien sûr. Oui. So we are dealing with a total mess. We are dealing with institutions that are amorphous and with weak people in top positions. What would be the remedy?
Well, the remedy, you know, ideally the remedy is to organize a reform of the treaty, but this will be very, very difficult because, you know, it's impossible because the reform of the treaty is unanimity.
It would take years and years.
Perhaps it could be also interesting to imagine another configuration of the EU. I mean, the three-circle union, you know, the federal centers, and after the market, and, you know, this is also one possibility. But I think that one of the major elements are twofold. The first is the appropriate choice of the leaders. We need to have people having a structure, a vision, some charisma, the capacity to communicate, and which is a rare species, by the way.
Do you think we will have them now?
I don't know, but the market is is limited. But never mind, we can hope. But the second point is that I said that the Lisbon Treaty is not good, but we can improve it, not to change the treaty, but to implement the treaty in the appropriate way. The trilogues are not coming from the treaties. The delegated acts, yes, are coming from the treaties, but the Commission can commit itself to inform the stakeholders when the delegated act is supposed to come. They can commit themselves to consult the profession, if not the member states. We can put clarity, we can put transparency, we can put better governance, we can put more uniform procedures. You know, there is a lot to do. But the problem, again, because you have a very weak political level at the Commission, and a very intergovernmental approach, all the DGs are working in silos. So each is making his own business without any interference with the other, which is very much against the organization of the system. If we have a real boss...
You could say the subsidiarity principle transposed in the functioning of the Commission.
Yes, but if we have a real boss, if we have a real boss in the driving seat, which is not the case for the moment, we can imagine that we will have a good functioning of the institution, that the DG will have to collaborate, that the desk officer will not completely free of action.
Will we have a real boss with the choice between Schulz and Juncker?
Well, first of all...
is this the end choice?
I cannot imagine. No, for me it is not. Absolutely not. First, because I have absolutely nothing pro or against Mr. Schulz, but I cannot imagine that a German could be appointed president of the Commission in the present circumstances when we have Germany having a real leadership role in the EU. So this is
there
for
will
me.
Be opposition even from inside the socialist group, you think?
Probably not, but it's not enough to have the support of the socialist group. Regarding Juncker, I mean, I have full respect for Juncker, but we know him very well since very long.
Too long, maybe.
And he has been defeated during the last elections, and so far so good. So I mean, we need new blood.
Verhofstadt?
Well, Verhofstadt would be an option, but he has as chance as I have. I mean, zero.
So you're not very optimistic.
No, I'm not.
And how about your job? How do lobbyists fare now, as compared with the, let's say, the era before Barroso?
Well, the good old days are far away. I mean, we are now in a new lobbying paradigm.
What do they mean, the good old days? What could you do then?
The good old days was a system in which the decision-making process was transparent. It was an easy identification of the actors and the possibility to contact them and to convince them. So it was a system in which at all the stages of the EU decision-making process.
When could you do more dirty tricks, then or now?
Well, the fact of dirty tricks is not an issue. I mean, now it's again much more complex. It's much more legal. You have to understand, never twice the same story. And the problem now is that you have two options: or you convince, or you have to fight against. And again, because the DGs are autonomous, when you have a desk officer against you, and when this desk officer don't want to listen to you, you have to fight. And this is very demanding. This is very difficult.
And do you think that a powerful president of the Commission could change things?
Yes, of course.
In the administration?
Of course. Well, again,
his own will?
I'm French, as my accent is showing. I don't want to say Jacques Delors, but Jacques Delors was someone extremely full respect for Jacques Delors, very good ideas, listening to people, having a systematically added value and interesting reflection. But Jacques Delors has a fantastic cabinet. Jacques Delors has an iron cabinet with top guys, Lamy, Lamoureux, Juillet, many others. So putting order in the system, giving instruction to the DGs. You know, the system was under a strict management. We cannot compare the cabinet of Jacques Delors and the cabinet of Barroso. I think that if we choose appropriate leaders, the system will be far better than it is. It will not be fantastic, but it can work.
But how can we have them if the major political groups in the parliament have already decided?
Yes, but again, this is true for my job as a lobbyist, and this is true for the whole life me as a citizen. I think it's time.
Can we go over the parliament's?
No, but I think it's time also for the professional in lobbying and for the citizen to express themselves. We are far too much in the politically system approach. We have to think out of the box. The lobbyists have to complain against the prison mechanism and opacity. They have to make their voice heard, but they are afraid because they say, "Well, I don't want to put myself against the Commission," which I think is a very bad reaction, because me personally, I have never had any problem with the Commission, simply because I'm a pro-European, and I think I have the right to say what I believe it's true. And I think it's very important also for the citizen to propose options, to propose alternatives. I think that the debate in the Parliament now is interesting for the choice of the Commission. What I have thought very good was the fact that Barnier dared to fight or to present himself against Mr. Juncker with a vote. This is very good. And I think we have to go to a more democratic approach when debates will be organized, people will present themselves against others, not because they are against them personally, but because they are other ideas. It's time in Brussels to break the politically correct approach, to think out of the box, and to organize systematic debates about everything.
These are wishes, because for institutional upheaval it is too late. We won't have an institutional earthquake before the end of summer. We will have a new commission based on these regulations that we have now. We can only hope, I think, to have to modify them afterwards. What, in your view, could be the worst and the best outcome of?
Well, I have no idea of the best of the worst. I have a clear vision of what will happen. And what will happen will be huge turbulences, huge turbulences. Political turbulences, administrative turbulences, and economic turbulences. Because again, the system is not sustainable. The system is not sustainable. Too many member states, they want to continue to enlarge, and we have the big problematic of the euro. The euro is not sustainable either. So we'll have big turbulences. I believe that the EU needs refundation, but I am convinced that this refundation will not come smoothly. The refundation will come from a breakdown. We will have somewhere a breakdown. A political breakdown or an institutional breakdown or an economic breakdown. And we see clearly an emerging opposition between the member states and the parliament. They are going in two different directions. We see that clearly also for the implementing acts and this secondary legislation. But this is good. I mean, for me, a crisis is a resource. We have not to be afraid of that. These turbulences will be good. It will be a very unstable period, but it will be for the best.
So you think we could, in the present conditions, have a strong commission with a strong president who would introduce reform? You think it's possible? Well,
I think that in the present circumstances we can have a commission far better than now, which is not so difficult, by the way, to have a great commission, I hope, I don't know. But I think also it's up to the stakeholders, it's up to the civil society to wake up and to be really a counterpower, to put pressure on the politicians, on the political level. And this is exactly what modern lobbying is. If you don't convince, you put pressure, and you win when you put the pressure in the camp of the other part of the decision making.
Thank you, Mr. Daniel Guéguen. I remind you that we had with us today Mr. Daniel Guéguen, master lobbyist, political writer, and visiting professor at the College of Europe in Bruges. We are in the studios of New Europe on Place Jourdan, the place where you can eat, drink, relax, and watch us make the news.